I'm a. If you've
And
watched even 30 seconds of this show, you'll know how opinionated I am about TDD being the thing. So,
well, and the TDD, has some baggage associated with it. I'm just
sure.
talking in general. No matter where you do your tests, beforehand, afterhand, whatever it is, you need something. It's like double entry bookkeeping for accounting, for programming. You need tests to kind of check your work, essentially.
Well, it also depends on how you define TDD because there was a big row going on years ago where people were saying TDD is bad, but that's because they were using that to mean test-driven design, which is horrible. It's test-driven development, which is good. But yeah, you don't want to design by test. So I think
Wait. I'm gonna need a definition here. What's the difference?
so. Test-driven design is I'm going to write a test and then I'll design my app to make my tests work, as opposed to
Right.
I'm going to design what I want, then write tests that describe that, and then code to make the test pass.
Okay.
So
I figured that's what it meant. I just wanted to clarify because that's not I've not heard that before. I like that a lot.
yeah, and there was, I think that's not as big a deal now, but several years ago when TDD was not first becoming a thing, because that's back in extreme programming and stuff, but um, the they were there was this big back and forth about it's horrible, it's great, it's horrible, it's great, but it was like two people talking about two different things, but using the same acronym. And I'm like, yeah, one of them is horrible and one of them's great. So,
Right. Yeah. I feel like when I hear about it, it sounds like I feel like when people talk about like the idealized version of TDD, it sounds like design driven development in a way, right? Where like you get a feature request and then you just start writing tests right before you go. And I could never do that. And that's why I thought TDD wasn't really for me, right? Because I was like, I can't do that. That's not the way my brain works, right? I need to go gather information. I need to look at the code and I need to like think about my plan and like maybe start writing some comments or like some whatever code, some just word code for me. And then at that point I think I was like, okay, at this point I could start writing tests, but I couldn't just like see a story and like, oh well, I'm obviously going to need all these classes and stuff, so I better just spec out some tests right quick. Like I was like, how could anyone do this? And the idea just seems so complicated and frustrating that I feel like it turned me off to the idea of TDD at all.
yeah, and it's one of those things where if you don't know how to approach it, it can be like one of the reasons I dislike Cucumber so much is because behavior driven development doesn't make any sense to me. Now it makes sense to a lot of people, but it in in the real world, in a production environment, it just becomes a mess. And it's slow, it's hard to troubleshoot. It doesn't give you any more information than RSpec does if you use RSpec correctly. But a lot of times when people were saying TDD, it's I'm going to sit down and write a bunch of tests and then figure out what I want my app to do. That's wrong. It's figure out
Right.
what you want and then start writing the words in English in the tests and then say, okay, what objects would I have to set up to do this? Now let's make it go.
Right. See, wait, you guys both use RSpec?
Oh yeah,
I'm
I
getting to
do.
the real questions here.
Well, I use RSpec. I prefer RSpec, but in my job, our test suite is split between Cucumber and RSpec, so I'm stuck in the Cucumber world, which is just, I just want to pull my hair out. But
All right. I like to check because I write mini tests and I don't want to. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. And then, the purists out there, which I somehow I always end up working with, are like, it's just Ruby. That's what mini tests. It's just Ruby. I'm like, I don't want to write Ruby. I'm trying to write some tests, right? Like,
yeah,
give me the buttons. I need the things. I want the DSL.
right.
Right. The
Yeah.
DSL works. It's good. I like it. It makes sense. It's got all these things and stuff. And mini tests. It feels like it's so hard to figure things out sometimes.
Right. And
Well,
many
the only
tests.
reason,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was saying the only reason I'm using RSpec and the only reason I'm using Ruby or Ruby on Rails is because of this guy right up here.
Ah,
Because when I was going to start the company years ago, he said, we should really do this in Ruby on Rails. And of course, he chose RSpec at the time. So
I corrupted him.
Wait, so y'all were together? I didn't pick that up yet.
We did.
yep.
You
Yeah,
did. So
we
not
started,
anymore.
but then kind of, I mean, we're still doing stuff
Gotcha.
together, but
Oh, yeah.
not
Quite a
right.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm married
I
to
got
his
it.
sister, so we see each other once in a while.
Ah, okay. So you can never escape fully.
That's
Gotcha.
right. Yeah, family's a thing,
I mean,
I-
before him, I was saying, hey, I should maybe think about doing this app in Cold Fusion because that's what I knew at the time.
You're welcome.
See, I have only heard the term. I have no idea what cold fusion is.
Yeah, you're not
I've
missing
only heard
anything.
Good.
It's a little ancient. I'll just say that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It was like a
That's cool.
automated HTML thinger that just made god awful HTML. And
I mean, it's basically like what early PHP, where everything was done in the views essentially equivalent.
Right. Very imperative. Interesting. That's I have some people like that I've worked with that like I feel like will work again. So that's cool that y'all have kind of like stuck together a bit. All right, here's the other question. Haml or ERB? We got a Slim user?
I'm an ERB person because that's where I learned, because I came into Rails right as Rails 2 was coming out.
Okay.
So ERB was the only thing,
Right.
and it was the only thing for quite a while. And so I learned how to use it and I got good with it. And then this other stuff started coming out like Haml and all that stuff. And I was like, it ain't broke. Why fix it?
Right.
Why spend the time with the learning curve for something that's perfectly fine for me? Yeah.
Right.
Chat is ERB too. So there you go.
I primarily use ERB. I like Haml. That's all I'll say. For a while there was a joke around that I was the Haml guy. I actually don't really write that much Haml comparatively. I do write a little bit more now, but I like it. Yeah, better.
And I don't have a problem with Haml. I actually, from a structural, conceptual standpoint, it's a better thing. But
Right.
I already had all the learning curve of ERB. I didn't want to. I was too lazy to spend the time to learn something else when ERB is working just fine.
Right. Sometimes that's the best way.
Yeah.
And once you have a project of a certain complexity, it's like trying to switch over to a whole different templating language. It's like holy macaroni.
I've tried that before, and I learned some valuable lessons on those days about why it was a bad idea and why it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, it's one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it things. If you start with Haml, fine, it's great. I think it's great. Yeah, Chad agrees. Why fix something that isn't broken? For sure. But yeah, it's there's learning curves involved, and you got to weigh that with, do I have time to actually get my work done? As much as I'd like to tinker around and learn every Railsism that there ever is, I can't because I got to produce something. So.
Right. If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.